So today's video is another one of those discussion-based topical videos that you guys love a lot and I really enjoy filming. But I'm also foreseeing that this is going to be a rambly, long-ass video. So if you want to take a quick pause and grab something, a little snack maybe as well for this chat, then that is totally cool because we have a lot to cover in today's video, which is, I guess, a little bit existential, to be quite honest with you, because honestly, with the types of videos that luxury creators make on YouTube, you kind of get bombarded with unboxings and hauls, and I kind of realized a few months ago, especially during the lockdown and everything, that I wanted to make content that was different, that actually had something a bit more unique in terms of a point of view. So while I'll still be making those types of videos, because I know you guys like watching those things, I really like watching those things, I do love a bit of vapid content where I can just sit back and go, oh, nice bag or nice shoes. But I also want to mix in other types of content like this, discussion based. And with that kind of topic in mind, I actually got into thinking, why do I actually like luxury and why do people like watching these kinds of videos? And I myself have received many a comment around why I even bother wasting my money on luxury brands. It seems like there's a polarized opinion either way. Either people really, really love it or really, really don't like it. It got me really snowballing and thinking about this to the point where I was like, look, let me make a video about this because I feel like other people might find this interesting. And then I kind of went online and just did like a internet search on just to see if there was any journal articles. I'm really a nerd at heart. I found a really, really good journal article, which is what I'll be referring to today in the discussion, which is why hence I have my laptop here. And I'll also link below the journal article and any other resources that I think you'll find interesting. But essentially this journal, which is called, let me just not say it wrong, it's called A Review and a Conceptual Framework of Prestige-Seeking Consumer Behaviour. There's so much psychology and marketing and so much inwards inflection that we can all do based on our shopping habits, and I found the insights in here really, really interesting. So that's why I wanted to share with you. Essentially, what I want to talk to you about is kind of the psychological, behavioral reasons why people buy luxury. So like any good journal, this article starts with a definition of what is prestige, and they go with prestige instead of luxury. I feel like they interchange them a little bit, but obviously by nature, something that is luxurious or therefore, you know, like hard to acquire, expensive, limited edition, all those kind of things are by nature prestigious. And although they don't go into the definition specifically of prestige, they define prestige as a spectrum. Although there are some objective qualities, like I mentioned, it could be the price, etc., there are also some more subjective or more socioeconomical factors that determine if something is prestigious at a certain point in time, because it can always shift, right? Hopefully that makes sense. But they define essentially prestige on a spectrum of upmarket, premium, and luxury. I think we can all make our own inferences in the countries that we're from, but for me personally, like I'm in the UK, the upmarket could be a brand like Reiss or All Saints. Premium could be something like the Saint Laurent, maybe a Dolce & Gabbana, and then luxury, I imagine, would be something to the effects of the Chanel Hermes. You usually, I guess, start from left to right, don't you? So you go with your normal brands, which are, by definition, non-prestigious, because, you know, prestige is and luxury is separated, I guess, by a number of factors that we'll go into later, but you go from like your basic kind of high street, and then you gradually, if you're like a normal person that was gradually working their way up, like I sure was, then, you know, you go from like your upmarket, your more higher end, your Karen Millens, like I mentioned, your All Saints, your Reiss, unless obviously you are born into the category where you start at luxury and just go up, in which case, lucky you. And what this article says is that the difference between the non-prestigious and prestigious brands is basically a distinction of 5 values. And this is basically contingent, like I mentioned before, on this social economic framework that you are in, because it could shift based on that. But just for the sake of like an overall summary, let me just read those 5 values to you, and then we can go into detail into each of them because I find them all very, very fascinating. The first value that is cited in this article is a signal of status and wealth, otherwise known as conspicuous consumption or the Veblen effect. And just for a quick summary of this particular value, it states that price is a really good indicator of the status of a particular brand or item, and it therefore enhances the value of it. The second value is that of exclusivity, otherwise known as the Snob effect. And I think this one speaks for itself, but just as a very quick summary, like I'm doing for all of them, is basically if everybody owns something from a particular brand, then it's by nature not prestigious. The third value is that of social value, otherwise known as the bandwagon effect. That's just around, if there's a certain hype or hysteria around a certain item, then that might be instrumental in your decision to buy it or from that brand. Number 4, we have emotional value, known as the hedonist effect. It's about the emotional or superficial benefits that it gives you. And then the final value, the fifth one, is that of quality and craftsmanship, otherwise known as the perfectionism effect. And that's about, technical superiority, the make, etc. I think we've all been there in one of the 5, if not all of the 5 at many points in time. Let's explain number 1, the Veblen effect. So I mentioned it earlier, and I'm sure none of you guys know who Veblen is. I certainly didn't, still really don't, but we give it a go. It's a coin turned by, and I'm going to get his name right, Thorstein Veblen. I believe he was an American economist and sociologist, but he essentially coined in the 1800s, I believe, the terms conspicuous consumption and conspicuous leisure. And some of you guys may already have an idea of what this is. He defines it as, the possession or pursuit of wealth and how that affects human behavior. And he's done a lot of reports on it. I haven't read all of it. I just know the TLDR versions of each of those, but you can have a look at your leisure. It's quite interesting. And essentially, Veblen suggests, and that's why you get the name Veblen effect, consequently, that conspicuous consumption was used by people to signal wealth and by inference power and status. And therefore, that is the utility of luxury goods for people who fit more into this category, that buying stuff by nature that's like really expensive, so the Hermes, the Rolex, whatever, that obviously denotes to people what social class they're in, their disposable income, etc. And if you want to be a knob about it, that they might be better than you. And I think this is something that you could honestly say is not just restricted to that of luxury goods. I think all of these factors are, just steeped in luxury for the time being for the sake of this article, but you can actually really zoom out on a macro level and apply a lot of these elements into just daily life. Price, therefore, has a positive role in the perception then of not just your wealth, your power, status as a whole, but also in terms of the quality of an item. And I myself find that as well. Like when you see something that's very, very expensive, you automatically assume that the quality will be better than its counterpart that is in the, I guess for the sake of this article, the non-prestige brands, right? And people use it, and they've cited a lot of studies as well, psychological, behavioral studies, that price is a cue that people often use when they are judging qualities from brand to brand. So if people making a decision between, I guess, 2 brands that are maybe similar, they'll probably look at the price and think, okay, so this one's more expensive, it must be better quality. There is a reason why Hermes can get away with bags that are in the tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands, because of the perceived superior quality and also the price point therefore matching in that way, so people kick up, I guess, less of a fuss compared to the likes of Chanel. People might not necessarily admit that this is a thing, that the whole, flexing status and power and that price is an indicator of it. If you put it into perspective, so for example, the Chanel example that I mentioned around price and how they're like comparative to Hermes at the moment, they're really climbing up there. People obviously have been quite mad in the past, and not gonna lie, I'm a little bit mad as well. However, if you were to spin it the opposite way and say, if Chanel kept their handbags at £2,000 or £3,000, which is what it was probably like a decade ago, would it still be superior in your mind? Now, especially if the gap is then widened between Chanel and Hermes, wouldn't you consider then Chanel a lower tier? And we see things that are expensive to be of a high quality. Whether that is the case or not is another thing, but that is just something to bear in mind, because by nature, if it's more expensive and it keeps going up in price, is a good investment, not just in terms of, holding aside like a stock and share or something like that, but it's a good investment because it's prestigious, because people will still want it. And I guess you could also say it's exemplified again in brands like Hermes, where they're using essentially like a prestige pricing strategy, which in terms of marketing would be that of, price increases, being kind of hush-hush on certain prices as well. In a capitalist society, there are certain hierarchies, there are certain different social strata, and Hermes just so happens to occupy, I guess, one of the higher, even the highest, especially in the handbag community. So Hermes is obviously very, very hard to acquire. They're using that and then upping the price to essentially appeal to people who are quite preoccupied with having or maintaining their wealth and status. This is something I think also that I've seen personally in brands like, for example, Christian Louboutin or Burberry from years ago. I think you're seeing maybe a resurgence of especially Burberry nowadays, but back in the day, I think it was associated, both those brands, with something that was a bit chavvy or everyone could get it, and therefore you saw a lot less people wearing it or feeling prideful of wearing it. And that just goes to show you how important public perception, the perception of others, and the wealth and prestige that's associated with a brand can impact people. Something that the report mentions, which is also quite interesting, is that although there is an element of, kind of an outwards show and display of wealth and therefore prestige, they also note the fact that people also consume things privately, such as fine wines, and I'm sure you guys can think of other things, if you shop at Waitrose or whatnot, the Harrods food hall, then these are obviously things that you're doing maybe just more for yourself, so just take that one, I guess, with a pinch of salt. Let's move to value number two, and that is exclusivity, otherwise known as the snob effect. This particular factor is essentially the perceived exclusivity of a product. It takes into account personal, emotional desire when you're buying a certain product from a certain brand. And it also talks about, similar to point number one, that, the influence that other people may have on your individual behaviors, etc. So in the research that's cited actually within this journal, it talks about the fact that if brands have a limited supply of a certain product, that, and I quote, rare items command respect and prestige. Any brand that has waiting lists, VIP clientele, made to order, certain events that are off limits, one-off pieces, limited edition pieces, limited stock, and high or frequent price increases, those are all measures that you could almost say, based on this snob effect, it's basically limiting your access to a certain brand, limiting the people that are able to acquire certain products from that luxury brand, and that all really adds to prestige. And there are further studies by two guys, I think, Veblen and Robin, and they mentioned that the scarcity of products has an effect on demand. So if you're thinking business terms, supply and demand, if something is rare, sold out, oh my God, you can't get it, people want it more. You see that in the resale market with, for example, sneakers. I'm a sneakerhead. I've fallen victim to that kind of entrapment with this kind of scarcity of product and just general hype and things like that. And they've managed also to do a lot of research around this. They've cited things around where they've observed situations where individuals want to express uniqueness. There are certain things that you might want, especially if it's limited, because you want to be that one person that has it and the other people don't. And that's why I feel like social media such as Instagram, especially when they learn your habits, so there's an algorithm that obviously picks the same things that you like to look for, and it can just really be an echo chamber, can't it, of just luxury, crazy, over the top lifestyle, and it's going to be really hard to keep up from that. And especially when you are looking at goods which are very, very expensive and then hard to acquire. I found that one to be quite an interesting one. It's certainly something that I fell victim to in the past, and I definitely have tried to step away from it. So let's move on to number three, which is social value, otherwise known as the bandwagon effect. And I think elements of the bandwagon effect are part of the snob effect. You could almost say one follows the other. I mean, we all know what jumping on the bandwagon is in colloquial terms in our everyday life. But in the context of this particular article, the bandwagon effect was coined by an American economist known as Harvey Leibenstein. The bandwagon effect is essentially based on people's desire to procure prestigious brands, and that they serve basically as a marker of group membership. And essentially it's therefore saying that this bandwagon effect will influence an individual's decisions to buy a certain item or, you know, prestigious brand because they want to fit in. And I guess if you fast forward into now and what that translates to in terms of fashion, you've got, you know, what's the hottest item, the most hyped up collections, brands, etc., what's on the catwalk, those kind of things. And that all has an impact, consciously or subconsciously, on what a person will buy. An interesting point that they made in this particular article, which I myself didn't realize I did this until I read this article, and it pointed it out really, and it's saying that essentially a person can use a prestigious brand, for example, during the week, but then use a modest one during the weekend to match their social standards. So it's really based on the social group or the time that you are in at that particular moment, which obviously I've mentioned in previous videos around safety and things like that, you know, to be mindful of where you're wearing your luxury. But I guess when it's written down with the fact that people conform with the majority opinion at a given time in a community, but also in their actual physical space, extending on the bandwagon effect, it mentions in this article that consumers attach less importance to price as an indicator of prestige, but I guess more emphasis on people's opinion of it, the effect that also that they have on others when making that purchase. All I can extrapolate from this is just the whole influencer blogger community in general is essentially doing that, isn't it? It's kind of projecting what I guess you want people to do in terms of influencing them to buy something or what is hot at the moment. That's why social media can sometimes be quite the echo chamber, and you do need to tap out sometimes because there is that element of groupthink, of peer pressure potentially to keep up with people. Then we'll move on to number 4, which is emotional value, the hedonist effect. And this essentially is all about the fact that while there are certain tangible elements like price and, you know, make and things like that, that can affect your individual decision to buy a certain item or into a brand, there are also non-cognitive and unconscious motives that may account for your decision. And that is where the emotional element comes in, because certain goods, certain services have been known, according to this article, to possess emotional value in excess of their functional utility. And when I did a bit of introspection and I thought about why I watch luxury unboxings and why I really have become a luxury channel as well, is because all of us derive some sort of emotional pleasure. And this is something that is seconded in this article. And it cites that recent studies in luxury consumption, because there is a whole body of work actually, guys, around luxury. It's not just vapid stuff like, oh my God, I bought this, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, this study has essentially said that luxury products are likely to provide subjective, intangible benefits, namely emotional responses associated with the consumption, such as sensory pleasure, aesthetic beauty, or excitement. And it's kind of all these emotional benefits that you get, the release of endorphins, etc., that you cannot just put a quantifier on in terms of like a monetary value. It's something that I guess is why we have a lot of shopaholics out here in this community. And that's why I guess some people constantly buy, maybe not luxury, but just buy loads of stuff in general, because they're constantly chasing that high, which I guess whether you like it or not, something that also needs to be controlled, because, you know, let's be honest, do we actually need more bags in our lives? Probably not, says the woman who has many in the background, but there are certain emotional values, intangible factors that it just makes you want another one. And especially when you combine it with other factors, that could be quality, it could be if you got it for a good price, as well as just, you know, for the fact that you've worked really hard for something and you really want it. That makes it all worthwhile and justifiable in your head. So that's definitely the emotional value, the hedonist effect is definitely something that I can resonate with. And then the final value that they cite in this research is that of quality and craftsmanship, otherwise known as the perfectionism effect. And this one, I think, it's hard to necessarily pinpoint in the luxury community whether a lot of people fit this profile, because we always talk about brands. I guess you see less around the craftsmanship, but I guess that's assumed, but not necessarily pointed out. And I guess that's what this article is seeking to do. So it cites the perfectionism effect as that where prestigious brands are expected by the consumer to show evidence of greater quality. You'd assume, and you'd probably hope, if you're spending a significant amount of money on something that's in the tens of thousands, that would be of better quality than something that was a couple of £100. And the quality element is therefore important because it gives customers the reassurance that they need that this particular product is prestigious, whether that be from like tradition, authenticity, just general craftsmanship that they know about this particular brand. It therefore enhances the particular value that they perceive that item or that brand has, and, you know, elevates them to maybe also the other factors of power, wealth, status, and whatnot. And therefore, as a result of it, they may themselves feel a heightened sense of pleasure and anticipation of waiting to unbox that item. What this article is effectively saying about the perfectionism effect is that people essentially see the perceived utility of an item to be more superior if they are of better quality craftsmanship, especially if they want to justify a certain price or exclusivity of a set of items. Then, you know, people exert their own judgment as well as the opinions and the objective, hopefully, information that's already out there to be like, that seems like it's of higher quality, therefore it should be more prestigious. But if you think of all of the rave reviews about Hermes and the artisans that put together their Birkins, Kellys and Constances, and you know, that is all kind of justified for the high prices. Similarly, then you've got brands like Chanel, who I've actually seen tangible marketing campaigns and videos of them talking about the classic flap and the craftsmanship of that, and they show you little videos of how the bags are made. I'm seeing a lot of those actually from other brands as well, like Dior as well. So it's interesting. People are always trying to hype up that quality element because they realize it when you're faced with two products that are similar in price, like the Chanel and Hermes, especially with the price increases and everything. People are having to make that decision as to which one they want to go for. And what's probably going to differentiate them, if the other factors didn't really come into play already, is that of craftsmanship. And therefore, at this current moment, people are gravitating more towards Hermes because they're saying, hey, the product is superior in terms of the craftsmanship. There are less quality issues that we are having with this. They are all made bespoke by hand, blah, 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 in such a way that actually the price that they command is justifiable compared to the likes of Chanel. It's something that is definitely a consideration for me personally, but I guess in this luxury community, people do talk a lot about brands. Otherwise, they'd go to kind of just artisans with no brand in Italy or France or whatever. But people don't do that because there is an element of wanting to say, hey, this is the brand that I have. But anyway, those are the 5 effects, the 5 values of why people buy luxury. I found them personally really interesting. I hope you did too. In terms of my own personal case, while I know this article says that people usually belong to one category pretty much, I actually resonate with a few of these. One, the status and wealth one, lesser so at the moment because I do have quite the collection. Trying to be humble AF, but no, I've actually built up a collection where I'm very happy with the brands that I have. So for me, I'm not even attempting to go into like the Hermes territory. It doesn't really interest me, to be honest with you. So this one's a lesser factor, but not gonna lie, like I mentioned just now, we'd all be wearing unbranded stuff, of which I do have unbranded nice stuff, but I can't help but get some Chanel, you know, I just love it. So that element, whether we like it or not, is there. The other one is that of emotional value. So deriving pleasure from the fact that if I've worked really hard for something, I think this is one of the bigger ones actually, if not the biggest one. There's always some nice memory that's attached to each of these bags or each of my luxury just pieces in general. So I find the emotional element the most important. And then the other one is that of quality. So the one that we just covered in terms of perfectionism effect. That I do think is important because I have covered in videos about quality issues that I've had with certain brands or things that you shouldn't buy or maybe think twice about. It is important, I guess, especially since I've grown my collection to a certain stage at the moment. I can consider this one a little bit more because I'm like, hey, I know what good quality is like and I know what bad quality is like, and anything else that crosses my path now, I will just say a flat out no. Anyways, we're going to cut off this rambling because it's already been too long and Lord knows I have a lot to edit. But also I think you guys can just read this stuff at your leisure. I highly encourage you to go ahead and take a look also at some of the other research. Let me know if you like this kind of stuff still. I know a few of you do, but if you've got specific topics that you want me to cover, the more topical, the better. I will happily talk about it. So thank you for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.